May 31st, 2008. Okay. What's your name, I guess we should say?
My name is Beverly Frances Monk, married name Spohr.
And I just have a few questions for you. The questions start talking about your childhood and then your teen years and your adult life. So
Okay.
it'll also be kind of cool to have for
Okay.
the kids down the line. So, what's the earliest event in your life that you can remember? Tell me about it.
The earliest. Oh, wow. I remember going to the plaza with my new dress and my fancy hat and my gloves for Easter. And the plaza had bunny rabbits that were like 8 or 10 feet tall, and you could sit in their laps. They weren't real. They still have some of them that many years ago.
Wow.
That's 70 some years ago. And that was, I think, the thing I remember most when I was little like that.
How old were you then?
Probably 3.
Wow.
And I went every year after that.
Uh-huh.
Even took my kids when they were big enough to go.
How did your parents choose your name? Do you know?
I asked my mom that one time. She said I was reading a book, and the girl's name in the book was Beverly. And then my middle name is my mom's first name. So,
Do you know what book it was?
no, she never did tell me the book. Never did tell. She was reading all the time. She read constantly.
Uh-huh.
But they were novels, they were not probably things that she should have been reading.
Where did you grow up?
Grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. Was born in Kansas City at St. Luke's Hospital. Lived in Kansas City all my life until I went to school. My junior year, I went away to school at the University of Missouri at Columbia. That's where I met Carl. Actually, I knew him when I first got down there, and he dated a couple of my sorority sisters a couple of times, but not any long-going thing. And my roommate was dating one of his fraternity brothers. They wanted me to go back at Thanksgiving. I went back to school early. That was my senior year. And they wanted me to go out with them. They were going to go to eat and go bowling. And I said, I can't. I came back to school early to study. I got a test, the next day, and can't do it. Come on and have fun. We won't stay long. And I was hungry, so I went. We went bowling, and I beat everybody, and I'd only bowled once before in my whole life, and they wouldn't believe me. And then he didn't ask me out right away, and it really bothered me, because I'd been going steady with this guy in Kansas City for almost 2 years. More than that, 2.5 years. And I didn't want to, for some reason I didn't want to ask him to the Christmas dance. Because when he came up to visit, he was kind of rude to my sorority sisters. So my roommate says, why don't you ask Carl? I said, no, he hasn't even asked me out. Just go ahead and call him. It's just nothing. Just go ahead. We'll have fun together. So I did. We started dating, and from then on, that was it. I told the guy in Kansas City, toodaloo.
Oh. How did you travel or go places in those days?
Usually by car.
Uh-huh.
My folks never took a vacation as such. We went somewhere, it was because my dad had to go for business, and he drove. Mm-hmm. And we drove right there and stayed all night, and that was our vacation. He didn't like to go places unless it was fishing.
Uh-huh.
He liked to go fishing, but that was about it.
Let's see. I didn't read through these questions beforehand. I should have read them so I knew what they
okay.
were. What's your brother's name?
Robert Wilson Monk Jr.
And let's see. Do you remember how you felt and what you did when he was born?
Yes, I cried because it was a boy. And I wanted a baby sister because he's 6 years younger than I am. And I wanted a baby sister so bad. And I got a little brother that got into everything, cut all the hair off all my dolls. When I had a date, he'd hide behind the couch and pop out, you know. That was Bob.
What experiences do you remember having with Bob?
Mainly that was kind. I remember when Carl came to meet my folks for the first time. He stayed in my room. I don't even remember where I slept. And he was sleeping late that next morning, and my brother came in and he said, "Is he still asleep?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll go throw a glass of water." And so he took a glass of water to him, and Carl was furious. And I had to calm him down. I don't know what he'd have done to Bob. Oh my. Let's see what else. Can't remember too much because he just was into everything of mine, you know, and I guess he liked to tease.
What kind of things did you do for fun?
Well, at that time, when I was really young, my dad bought a pony, and we had stables. I don't know how far it was from our house. I thought it was a long way, but I guess it was several miles. And unbeknownst to my mom and dad, they bred her, so she had a little colt, and her name was Judy. So we named the colt Punch. Punch and Judy was characters. I don't remember what. I think they were cartoon characters. I don't know what they were. But anyway, Punch was a little imp. She got into everything they were about ready to ask us to leave. She got into everybody's food, and I don't know why they didn't keep her penned up. I don't know why, because she was little. I used to love to go out there and ride Judy, and I'd ride her as fast as we could go. I thought it was fast anyway. And I really couldn't do too much. They finally had to sell her because they didn't want me exercising it that much because they found out that I had the heart murmur. And they didn't want me doing anything extreme. But I think later on, from what my father said, they sold her financially. The place wasn't going to stay in business, and they didn't have another place to keep her. And they sold her, and they didn't know that the guy that took her traveled around to all these carnivals and stuff, and made her a pony, where they got on ride ponies,
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happened to her. And that was I couldn't play outside a lot or anything. My dad built me well, it was like a little dollhouse, but it was child size. And I had more fun, and my friend, we lived on the corner and the street went around, and she lived over there, and she came over, and we just had a wonderful time in there, and the bees got in it. So my dad burned the bees out, and then he tore the thing down. He wasn't going to have those bees around anymore. But that was a fun time. I don't know if you have the picture of the soda pop stand he made for us. Well, the girl in that picture is her, Beth Ann. And we had several of those. I don't know why, but we sold soda pop. I don't know what we did with the money. I don't even, because people didn't sell, they didn't have them to make for financial help to somebody or other. I guess we pocketed it. Probably didn't, because I imagine my dad spent so much for wood and everything making the stands that he went in the hole, I'm sure. But it kept us busy, and we had fun.
Now tell me about, you had a heart murmur. How old were you then?
They found it when I was just getting ready to go to kindergarten.
How did they find out?
Well, my grandmother had some heart problems on my dad's side. Um, and one day I was staying with her, and she went with me, or I went with her, I should say, to the doctor for a checkup, and she mentioned something about me being tired a little bit she didn't think that was right. And so the doctor listened to my heart, and he let me listen to hers, And he said, I think we need to talk to her mom and dad. And that's when he told me that he'd heard a slight murmur, and they thought and they let me go to kindergarten, but my mom would have to take me to school, pick me up at school, and take me home, and then I went to bed all afternoon and evening. I didn't get to play or anything. That went on for about a year, and then I got to go to school, but I still couldn't walk home. And I had all the way, even through high school, had some kind of physical education that was like, well, when I got in college, I took archery, because you could do that without wearing your heart out, But as I grew older, I outgrew it, and they say they can't hear it now. So hopefully. And everybody keeps saying, whenever I mention it, they'll say, well, did you have, what is it? I don't know what kind, it was a disease that a lot of kids had, and that would cause a heart murmur like that. And my doctor said no, that I didn't. So I don't know what caused it.
It's interesting. Let's see. Did your friends or family have any nicknames for you?
Yes, my brother called me Beverly, because he couldn't say Beverly when I was little, so he called me Beverly for a long time. And so my dad picked up on it. He called me Bear, and he still called me Bear when I was married. After I was married, he still was calling me Bear.
Did you like that or not?
It didn't bother me near as much as when I went to college and they called me Monkey, because my maiden name was Monk. My roommate was the worst one of all. She'd yell down the hall when the phone rang, "Monkey, you're one on the phone!"
Oh.
That I did not like.
What chores did your parents have you do, and how did you feel about doing them?
I had to wash dishes, and I didn't like washing or drying dishes. But I felt better one day when the neighbor lady said, "Oh, I enjoy it when you wash dishes." And I said, "What?" Because the sink, the window over the sink was facing her. She had a side porch, and it was screened in, and she'd lay out there and read, and I would sing whenever I washed dishes, and she liked to hear me sing, she said. So that made the washing dishes a little easier, and I dusted, that kind of stuff.
Let's see, what was Christmas like when you were young?
We always had a big, big tree, and family always had to go to my grandmother Monk's for dinner. You weren't asked, you just were expected to be there, and everybody usually was. But we had Christmas as far as exchanging gifts at home on Christmas morning. Lots of gifts. I was spoiled. Because I was, as I said, 6 years older than my brother, so that, those first 6 years I was the only one, so I got a lot. And my grandma on my mom's side, Mimi, she was always making me things. I had beautiful dresses because she made them, I guess that's why I got so close to her, because she was so sweet to me. And we'd go shopping, and she'd let me pick out the material. I probably picked out horrid things, but, she never said that. You can't have that. Now, my mom was the opposite. I had to get what she wanted. So.
Did you have any special traditions at Christmas?
Not really, except going to my grandfather Monk's house for Christmas dinner.
What about celebrating birthdays? Did you have any traditions or do any special celebrations with the
No,
family?
we usually had birthday parties every year. I don't know how they did it, but Mom would fix the cake and have the kids, you know. I can remember once when I guess I must have been I don't know if I was in kindergarten or not, but I had a whole bunch of kids for Christmas, for my birthday, and it was sunshiny day since it was in October. A lot of times in October, Kansas City is cold. But it happened to be a nice warm day, and my folks had gotten me, I don't remember what you call them, but you have a handle and you pump on your feet in front of you and pump the handle. I don't remember what you call those things. I never had seen one before. They got it for me. And of course that was the thrill because nobody else had either. They all wanted to ride it, and I was quite popular that day. But other than just having a birthday cake, Mom always had one made special. Once in a while she'd make them, but most of the time she had them made. She was too busy to make one.
What church did you go to?
Well, when I was young, this neighbor took me. Mom and Dad didn't go very often then, and they had been that's where they met each other, was in the church. But they weren't going to church then, and so they asked me to go with them, and I wanted to go, enjoyed it. It was called Trinity United Brethren Church. I don't know what the denomination was really, but I went with them for years. And then my mom and dad, we moved from 61st in Baltimore to 61st in Paseo to 64th in Baltimore. And I'm with what should have been in a different school district, but it was my last of my junior year, and I didn't want to leave, so they gave them special permission so I could go to my school that I'd been going to, my high school. So Mom and Dad, some kind of physical education that was like, well, when I got in college, I took archery, because you could do that without wearing your heart out, But as I grew older, I outgrew it, and they say they can't hear it now. So hopefully. And everybody keeps saying, whenever I mention it, they'll say, well, did you have, what is it? I don't know what kind, it was a disease that a lot of kids had, and that would cause a heart murmur like that. And my doctor said no, that I didn't, so I don't know what caused it.
It's interesting. Let's see. Did your friends or family have any nicknames for you?
Yes, my brother called me Beverly, because he couldn't say Beverly when I was little, so he called me Beverly for a long time, and so my dad picked up on it. He called me Bear, and he still called me Bear when I was married. After I was married, he still was calling me Bear.
Did you like that or not?
It didn't bother me near as much as when I went to college and they called me Monkey, because my maiden name was Monk. My roommate was the worst one of all. She'd yell down the hall when the phone rang, "Monkey, you're one on the phone!"
Oh.
That I did not like.
What chores did your parents have you do, and how did you feel about doing them?
I had to wash dishes, and I didn't like washing or drying dishes. But I felt better one day when the neighbor lady said, "Oh, I enjoy it when you wash dishes." And I said, "What?" Because the sink, the window over the sink was facing her. She had a side porch, and it was screened in, and she'd lay out there and read, and I would sing whenever I washed dishes, and she liked to hear me sing, she said. So that made the washing dishes a little easier, and I dusted, that kind of stuff.
Let's see, what was Christmas like when you were young?
We always had a big, big tree, and family always had to go to my grandmother Monk's for dinner. You weren't asked, you just were expected to be there, and everybody usually was. But we had Christmas as far as exchanging gifts at home on Christmas morning. Lots of gifts. I was spoiled because I was, as I said, 6 years older than my brother. So that, those first 6 years, I was the only one. So I got a lot. And my grandma, on my mom's side, Mimi, she was always making me things. I had beautiful dresses because she made them, just. I guess that's why I got so close to her, because she was so sweet to me. And we'd go shopping and she'd let me pick out the material. I probably picked out horrid things, but she never said that. You can't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Now my mom was the opposite. I had to get what she wanted. So.
Did you have any special traditions at Christmas?
Not really, except going to my grandfather Monk's house for Christmas dinner.
What about celebrating birthdays? Did you have any traditions or do any special celebrations with the family?
We usually had birthday parties every year. I don't know how they did it, but Mom would fix the cake and have the kids, I can remember once when I guess I must have been I don't know if I was in kindergarten or not, but I had a whole bunch of kids for for my birthday, and it was sunshiny day since it was in October. A lot of times in October, Kansas City is cold. But it happened to be a nice warm day, and my folks had gotten me, I don't remember what you call them, but you have a handle and you pump on your feet in front of you and pump the handle. I don't remember what you call those things. I never had seen one before. They got it for me. And of course that was the thrill because nobody else had either. They all wanted to ride it, and I was quite popular that day. But other than just having a birthday cake, Mom always had one made special.
Mm-hmm.
Once in a while she'd make them, but most of the time she had them made. She was too busy to make one.
What church did you go to?
Well, when I was young, this neighbor took me. Mom and Dad didn't go very often then, and they had been that's where they met each other, was in the church. But they weren't going to church then, and so they asked me to go with them, and I wanted to go, enjoyed it. It was called Trinity United Brethren Church. I don't know what the denomination was really, but I went with them for years. And then my mom and dad, we moved from 61st in Baltimore to 61st in Paseo to 64th in Baltimore. And I was, what should have been in a different school district, but it was my last of my junior year, and I didn't want to leave, so they gave me special permission so I could go to my school that I'd been going to, my high school. So Mom and Dad, some kind of physical education that was like, well, when I got in college, I took archery, because you could do that without wearing your heart out, But as I grew older, I outgrew it, and they say they can't hear it now. So hopefully. And everybody keeps saying, whenever I mention it, they'll say, well, did you have, what is it? I don't know what kind, it was a disease that a lot of kids had, and that would cause a heart murmur like that. And my doctor said no, that I didn't. So I don't know what caused it.
It's interesting. Let's see. Did your friends or family have any nicknames for you?
Yes, my brother called me Beverly because he couldn't say Beverly when I was little, so he called me Beverly for a long time, and so my dad picked up on it. He called me Bear, and he still called me Bear when I was married. After I was married, he still was calling me Bear.
Did you like that or not?
It didn't bother me near as much as when I went to college and they called me Monkey because my maiden name was Monk. My roommate was the worst one of all.
Uh-huh.
She'd yell down the hall when the phone rang, "Monkey, you're one on the phone!"
Oh.
You know. That I did not like.
What chores did your parents have you do, and how did you feel about doing them?
I had to wash dishes, and I didn't like washing or drying dishes.
Uh-huh.
But I felt better one day when the neighbor lady said, "Oh, I enjoy it when you wash dishes." And I said, "What?" Because the sink, the window over the sink was facing her. She had a side porch and it was screened in, and she'd lay out there and read, and I would sing whenever I washed dishes, and she liked to hear me sing, she said. So that made the washing dishes a little easier, and I dusted, that kind of stuff.
Let's see, what was Christmas like when you were young?
We always had a big, big tree, and family always had to go to my grandmother Monk's for dinner. You weren't asked, you just were expected to be there, and everybody usually was. But we had Christmas as far as exchanging gifts at home on Christmas morning. Lots of gifts. I was spoiled because I was, as I said, 6 years older than my brother, so that, those first 6 years I was the only one, so I got a lot. And my grandma on my mom's side, Mimi, she was always making me things. I had beautiful dresses because she made them, just, I guess that's why I got so close to her, because she was so sweet to me. And we'd go shopping and she'd let me pick out the material. I probably picked out horrid things, but she never said that. You can't have that. Now my mom was the opposite. I had to get what she wanted. So.
Did you have any special traditions at Christmas?
Not really, except going to my grandfather Monk's house for Christmas dinner.
What about celebrating birthdays? Did you have any traditions or do any special celebrations with the family?
We usually had birthday parties every year. I don't know how they did it, but Mom would fix the cake and have the kids, I can remember once when I guess I must have been I don't know if I was in kindergarten or not, but I had a whole bunch of kids for for my birthday, and it was sunshiny day since it was in October. A lot of times in October, Kansas City is cold. But it happened to be a nice warm day, and my folks had gotten me, I don't remember what you call them, but you have a handle and you pump on your feet in front of you and pump the handle. I don't remember what you call those things. I never had seen one before. They got it for me. And of course that was the thrill because nobody else had either. They all wanted to ride it, and I was quite popular that day. But other than just having a birthday cake, Mom always had one made special. Once in a while she'd make them, but most of the time she had them made. She was too busy to make one.
What church did you go to?
Well, when I was young, this neighbor took me. Mom and Dad didn't go very often then, and they had been that's where they met each other, was in the church. But they weren't going to church then, and so they asked me to go with them, and I wanted to go, you know, enjoyed it. It was called Trinity United Brethren Church. I don't know what the denomination was really,
Mhm.
but I went with them for years. And then my mom and dad, we moved from 61st in Baltimore to 64th, 61st in Paseo to 64th in Baltimore. And I was, which should have been in a different school district, but it was my last of my junior year, and I didn't want to leave, so they gave them special permission so I could go to my school that I've been going to, my high school. So Mom and Dad.
Okay. When you were a teenager, what kind of books did you like to read?
I wasn't a reader.
Really?
I only read the books that I had to read for school.
Uh-huh. Did you have any favorite radio or television programs?
Not when I was in high school.
When you were older then? Or?
When I was younger.
Oh,
I
younger?
used to listen to the radio, and I used to listen to Captain Midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the lady, the girl? Little Orphan Annie or something like that. I don't remember what it was now. But I used to send in, and I had a decoder.
Uh-huh.
And you listened every day, and they gave you a special message, and you used your decoder to figure out what the message said. I look forward to that like everything. Gee.
What was teenage music like then, and what was your favorite kind of music?
Whatever the popular things were, it never was anything as wild as they have now.
Did you have any favorite songs?
Nothing in particular. I like soft, sweet music, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I always have liked that better than some of the wild stuff. I remember the one time I got the fellow that I dated from the Country Club Christian Church took me to the Playmore, which isn't in existence anymore, but it was like a big indoor theater that was a dance floor, and around the outer edge of it were places you could sit, you know. They didn't have any alcohol, but and the big bands would come into Kansas City, and I got to go. He asked me to go to one, and I was so thrilled because I'd never been to see a big band before. So that was, and my mom got me this lace dress to wear, and it was beautiful. But it was real low, and you had to have a strapless bra, and I was so flat that I couldn't get a strapless bra to fit me. So I didn't wear a bra, and I was so embarrassed all evening. I wish I'd had worn one, even if it was uncomfortable, stuffed it or something. Because and he said, "You don't have a bra on." Well,
He said that?
Yeah, because he could, you know, put his hands, he could feel that I said, "That's not something we talk about." I was so angry with him. And I was so embarrassed I didn't know what to say. Gosh, but I felt uncomfortable all evening.
Uh-huh.
Now they don't care what they have off.
Well, the next question is, did you go to school dances, and what were they like? And how did teenagers dance then?
We did the bunny hop, of course, and we did what do you call that? The swing.
Uh-huh.
And at that point, I guess until my junior year in high school, a bunch of girls would go and a bunch of boys would go. You know, we didn't. And then my junior and senior year, I started going with different fellas, and they would take me.
Mm-hmm.
The first one I remember, I was so thrilled. His dad owned a coal company, and we thought he was really, really rich. And we had dated several months, and he had a car. Most of the fellas didn't have their own car, but he had a car. And he got sick just before Christmas, and I don't remember what I got. I got some candy or something for him. And he was out of school for a week or two before Christmas. And So I took it by, my mom and dad drove me over there, and I took it up to the front door and gave it to his mother. I'd never met her before. And she said, I'll give it to him and close the door. So later he said, you shouldn't have done that. And I said, well, my folks brought me by. I had it, I was going to give it to you, when you got better, feeling better. And somebody later told me that his parents were alcoholics, and he didn't want me to know that. And he was afraid that I sensed that that's what was wrong with his mom that night. We didn't date very much later after that.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad never ever drank, so my mom might drink just for show that she had something sitting in front of her, but she never did drink very much either, and my dad was completely against it. So I was a little bit concerned about alcoholics, because I had an aunt and uncle that were alcoholics that killed themselves from drinking so much alcohol. Both had kidney problems, and so.
What responsibilities did you have at home when you were a teenager?
Not very many. Had help in the yard, had help with dishes and stuff like that, but not really. My mom had help once a week as far as cleaning the house, so she didn't really, make me do too much as far as the house. And I would help my dad planted a big vegetable. When we lived on Paseo, the house sat on one piece of land, then we had another piece of land between us and the next house that was almost as big. And there was a big hedge, I guess about 2/3 of the way back, and he took from there to the back line and had it all plowed up, and we planted vegetables and tomatoes and corn. I had to help weed that. I hated that vegetable garden.
Why?
All the weeding. In the humidity of Kansas City.
Yeah. Did anything difficult happen to you as a teenager?
No. Not really. Can't think of a thing.
Who were your friends then? And what did you do with them?
Well, let's see. I had a girlfriend that lived across the street from me. Paseo our houses faced each other, but there was a road that was 2 lanes that all went north, and then there was a big wide park between them, and then 2 lanes that went south, and she was on the other side of that. And supposedly we were really good friends until we got to school, and then everybody else was her friend. She forgot I was there, and that used to hurt my feelings. But I belonged to the sorority, and the other social thing was supposedly because you had high grades, but it was really more social than that. You had to have high grades to get in, but it was still really a social thing. So everything kind of centered around those two. And then I looked forward to going to sorority meetings because all the boys would come over afterwards and walk us home. Never will forget the 2 of them one night were arguing who was going to take me, and I said, okay, let's all go. So we did. They both walked me home. Oh, nobody had cars. Not very many of them had cars. A couple of them had cars, but most of them didn't. And so we walked everywhere. Probably better for it. Because, gosh, the high school was, probably 4 miles at least, maybe more than that, from my house. So, yeah, we walked over. Never thought anything of it.
What made you choose what you were going to do in college?
I think I told you before that I didn't really do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I took education because I liked little kids, and felt like that if I couldn't do the art, then that was the next best thing. And I enjoyed it when I did it. Then when I went back to teaching after my kids were grown, I didn't enjoy it. I really didn't give it a fair chance, I guess, though, because I went from kindergarten and first grade kids to fourth grade kids, which is quite a difference. And from then until the time that I did the substitute teaching was such a change in the way the kids felt about teachers. And of course, substitute teachers, they always took advantage of them. Mm-hmm. So I didn't enjoy it, and I thought I can't help them if I don't enjoy it. So I didn't do it anymore. So.
Well, the rest of the questions are about when you were an adult. And the first one, I know we talked about it a little bit, but it asks about how and when you met Grandpa and your first impressions of him.
My first impressions of him?
Mm-hmm.
I thought he drank too much. I thought he knew too much. And he did. But he was an excellent dancer. And I thought that would be fun to go to dances. And he always came on a date. He always was so well dressed. And I thought, he kept talking about his folks lived in a little town and they worked, both had to work. And I thought, how can he dress so fancy? He borrowed clothes from the fraternity brothers to go out. That's how he had such good looking clothes. And my least favorite color, I guess, is green. First time he came to pick me up, he had a green sweater on. But it looked pretty good on him.
Oh.
Oh my.
Tell me about dating before you were married.
Before I was married?
Dating Grandpa.
Oh gosh. Well, like I told you, it was supposed to be a blind date, but I knew him and he knew me, so it wasn't really a blind date. But the worst part of it all is I had gone with a fellow that actually was a year younger than me, which was just terrible in those days. That was a pledge for his fraternity. And we were sitting at the next table over from he and his date. And it was called the Old South Ball because Kappa Alpha is his fraternity and it's a Southern University. Originally, most of the Southern states, that's the fraternity. And they have the Old South Ball, and they all grow sideburns and mustaches. Usually not a beard or goatee or whatever, but it was the mustache and the sideburns. Well, this one guy had sideburns down here, and they were thick, I mean, I don't know how he grew them, because everybody else was growing them, and they didn't look half the size of his. And he went in, he was mad at his date, and he went in to straighten them up, and he got this one too short, and he got him so short that he shaved him off. So Carl won the bottle of whiskey, and he set it down on the floor between he and his date, and she knocked it over and broke it. I thought that was hilarious. And I laughed, and he was so angry with me I wonder he ever wanted to go out with me. He was angry for me to laugh at the fact that he lost his bottle of liquor. I thought it was hilarious. I didn't like her either. That was before I ever thought about dating him, too.
Uh-huh.
She was a spoiled brat. She lived there in Columbia. I think her mother was more in love with Carl than she was. And I almost pledged that sorority that she belonged to, and I was so glad I didn't when I found out she was in there. Oh, that would have been a mess, wouldn't it? I probably wouldn't have ever gone with Carl.
Yeah.
I guess that's why I didn't pledge that one. But that's my aunt's, that was, I don't know how, some relation of hers was in it, and her best friend was in that sorority, and they wanted me to in that sorority, and I didn't know one sorority from another. So I didn't like some of those girls.
So once you did start dating, how long was it before you got married?
Well, you know, I was trying to remember. I think it was, it must have been, it must have been Thanksgiving of my senior years when we first started dating.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got engaged in, I guess it was May. It was before school was out. And because in our sorority, when you got engaged, they always had a circle, and they'd pass this candle around, and then it'd go around a couple times, and the person that got engaged blew it out. Well, I was, I was so excited. I blew it out the first time. I said, "Oh no, I'm sorry." So they didn't think it was me. So it went around 3 or 4 times, and I finally blew it. They said, "What? You just didn't. You just said." I said, "Well, I just said I was sorry. I didn't mean to blow it out the first time." But then we couldn't get married right away after school graduation because he had a naval scholarship, and that meant that he had to join the Navy for 2 years after he graduated from college.
Uh-huh.
And the first thing they did was take a world cruise, which started, I think it was sometime the end of July, and he wouldn't be back in the States until August of that next following year. So, and I couldn't go. I couldn't go from place to place because they were not going to be in one place at all at any length of time. So we decided to wait till he got back, and he called and said, I want to change the date from the 22nd of August to the earlier than that. I'm going to be back sooner, we think. And I'd had, invitations made. I had all these plans made. I said, I can't change it. Well, he ended up coming back earlier than what they thought. So when we got married, we went down and stayed at the Mulebach Hotel in Kansas City, came back to my mom and dad's house the next day to open the rest of the packages. Told her what we didn't want she could take back, and then made arrangements to have the stuff picked up and taken back to Norfolk, Virginia. We flew to Norfolk that next night and stayed in a hotel that they didn't have any air conditioning. They had fans in the ceiling.
Uh-huh.
And it was so hot, and so we opened the windows and looked out, and the whole street was full of sailors, and it was that way all night long.
Okay. So when and where were you married then?
We were married the 22nd of August, 1973, was it? I don't know. That's terrible. I graduated 1973, not 73, no. Can't be. Your mom was born in 56. We were married. I was, let's see, I'm graduated in 1953. So it had to be 54.
Okay.
August of 54. 53 or 54, I don't know which.
What do you remember?
Have to be 54.
Uh-huh. What do you remember about your wedding day?
I was petrified. I didn't know if I'd made the right decision or not. Oh, I'll never forget that. So glad when it was all over with. I knew it was the right thing, but before I was just, it was the right thing.
Yeah. What was it like to be a newlywed in those days?
Well, it wasn't good for me because I didn't know a thing about anything.
What do you mean?
Well, my mom never let me cook very much, although I liked to cook. She didn't. We had to have meat, mashed potatoes, or usually mashed potatoes, and a meat, and a vegetable. We never had salads. We never had any fish. We never had things, different. And so I guess she didn't think I could. I don't know whether she did. I could peel potatoes for the mashed potatoes, though. And I didn't know much about how babies and how to have them or what to do with them.
Uh-huh.
So I was really green, I guess you'd say. I didn't know a thing about anything, I didn't feel like. But I got along fine.
Yeah. What memorable or humorous adventures did you have?
Humorous, oh gee. Can't think of anything humorous.
It's hard on the spot like that, huh?
Yeah, not right on the spot, no.
Yeah. Well, the next one, what was it like to become a parent? How did you feel?
Well, I was really frightened because we were in Norfolk, Virginia. And Carl was due to get out the first part of June. And Paul came on the 5th of April. And so he they released him a little bit early, but we're still in Norfolk. And I was there, no parents there with me, and I was so frightened. I had a friend who was a nurse at the hospital where Paul was born, or I don't know what I'd have done. Because I was really scared. I didn't know what was going to happen even. I was just... But I made it through it. But I'm grateful for her. And I lost track of her because she lived in New York, Rochester. And her husband was on the ship with Carl. And it's a great, big, tall guy. Huge, tall. Not heavy set, but just big boned, completely bald. And, early 20s. Never did figure out why he was so bald. I think he must have had some kind of disease or something that he... Ellie and Dawn. And they were such good friends. And I used to write to her. And then when the kids went to school and I'd write and tell them, things that my kids are doing. And then she'd write and tell me something that her kids did that was a little bit bigger than what my kids did. And we finally stopped writing each other. Because it got to be... I can do you one better than you can, And I lost track of her. That's too bad because they were really good friends. So don't ever do that.
During your adult years, where have you lived and why did you move there?
Well, let's see. I lived in Kansas City all my life till I got married. We went from Kansas City, Carl was in the Navy, and we went to Norfolk, Virginia. We were there 2 years. And then he was looking for a job. He had a degree in electrical engineering. We flew several different places, and I was pregnant with Paul at the time. Probably shouldn't have been flying, I don't know. And we went to Cincinnati. And I felt so sick, and I had Tums in my coat pocket, and I chewed them on the plane, and we got out and went to the hotel, and it was starting to snow that night. And I reached in my pocket to get my Tums, and they were gone. And I just had indigestion so bad, and I got to have something. Carl said, I'll go get you something. So he put his shoes on, and out he went into the snow. And he couldn't find a drugstore. He finally found somebody that told him somebody down the street, and he walked I don't know how many blocks. He never did find any Tums. And I made it through the night without the Tums. We got some the next morning, but oh, it was miserable. So we didn't go to Cincinnati on that job. I was I was glad. I didn't have good thoughts about that place. Anyway, from Norfolk, he got a job in St. Louis with McDonnell Aircraft. So we stayed with his folks and bought a house on a GI Bill in Florissant, Missouri, which is just north of St. Louis. And we're just in heaven. And he had an opportunity to go to work for a company in Denver, Colorado. Actually, it was out south of Denver, to work on the Titan missile. And he was just thrilled to death with that. And off we went. And by that time we had 2 kids, Amy and Paul. And we were in Denver for a couple of years, and then he loved working on that. He really enjoyed it. And I got to go on the missile one time. They let the family come out, and it was on the side of a mountain, and they actually had it strapped down so that even if they turned it on, it couldn't take off. They had to test the engines that way.
Yeah.
And so they let us go up in the top and walk down, and they had ramps where we could go up the bottom part of it. It was really interesting. I wish I'd have learned more about it before I went, because it would have been more, interesting to see. So I didn't know what some of the things were for. Then my mom got cancer.
I didn't know that.
She had to have a hysterectomy. And you know that the last time I spoke to her about it, she swore up and down she never had a hysterectomy and she never had cancer. Well, she did, because that's one of the reasons we moved to Kansas City. Was Carl started looking for a job, and I didn't want him to change because I knew he loved that, And I said, I can fly back and forth, or take the train. And he said, let me just look. And this job turned up with this small company. And it turned out that the guy who owned the company and started it was a friend of my mom and dad's. But they didn't know the name Spohr, was connected. And they hired Carl. And so he came here. And while Mom was in the hospital, this guy was in the next room next to her. And he died. He just would scream. And I said to the nurse, is there something they can do for him? And she said, we're giving him the strongest medicine we have. And he would just scream. And I didn't want Mom to hear it, because I didn't know how much, she was going to go through. Luckily, she came out fine. But he died. And so we were in Kansas City, and we're there until we went to Harrisonville, Missouri, and bought us 7 acres, almost 10 acres.
When did you move there?
We went there in, I'm not sure exactly. We were there, let's see, I've been here 6 years, so it was about 27 years ago. And we were there about 20 years, 21, something like that. And I liked it, but the house was constantly, being an old 110-year-old house, things were going wrong with it constantly, and it was just eating up every penny we had. So when we had an opportunity to sell, we started looking for a ranch, because I had trouble with my knee, and we found this one, and he was happy for that year that he was here. That's about it.
What did you do for entertainment, and what were some of your favorite traditions?
Entertainment, probably watch the television. We went to some ball games. The kids liked baseball, and Carl worked with the Little League baseball and soccer, so we never did go to a soccer game, though, come to think of it. A professional soccer. I don't know if they had any here then. But we spent a lot of time with that house in Harrisonville, and had the same thing in Prairie Village. The house there was We had basement problems, and Carl tore the whole basement wall out of one end of it, put it back in. That'll never move. If it does, the whole hill will come down. And most of our social things were with kids' sports and social life, you know, taking them, going with them. Till we got into the church, and then everything from then on was the church.
Did you have any traditions in your family over the years?
Not really. None that I can pin right down now.
Yeah. What talents did you have as you grew up?
Well, I took tap dancing, and I wasn't very good at that. I liked it, but I wasn't going to be a professional dancer, that's for sure. And I wanted to play the piano so bad. My dad would not buy me a piano, so there was a place that taught piano lessons about 6 or 8 blocks from us, and I walked over there, took my piano lessons, then would come home, and the next day I'd get on the streetcar and go to my grandma's house. She had a big old upright piano, and she let me come over and practice on that. And I did that till it got winter time, and then it was too cold to walk all that distance, you know, because after I got off the streetcar, I had to walk down a hill and back up a hill and then down another block after that, and they were long blocks. And the street that went down and up, they were slippery. So that kind of ended my piano career. And other than a little bit of art stuff, I guess that was about it.
Well, you did
I like some sewing.
and you painted the porcelain stuff.
I didn't do that until after I was married. Long time after I was married. Didn't start that till when? Oh, I don't know when it was. It's been a while, probably 30 years. But I really enjoyed that. That's why I hate to give it up if I move. But I guess we come to those things sometimes. I told your mom I just hated to give up my. She said, well, what? Why give it up? I said, and where am I going to put a kiln? Wherever I go? Well, you can put it in my garage. I said, where? I don't think she liked that too well. But the last time I was there was no place that I could have put a kiln.
Well, I'm sure they'd make room if they
I'm sure
wanted.
they would. I know they would. No, your dad's been real sweet to me.
Let's see, the next question says, have you had any personal or family tragedies in your life? If you'd like to talk about them.
I guess the fact that I just had a lot of deaths in the family and things happen in my life as an adult, all within a year's time. And that was really difficult. And I guess the thing that kept me going was Carl. He said to me, I didn't know you were this strong. I didn't know I was either. But I lost my dad. David got in trouble and ended up in jail. And I lost my grandma. I lost my mom, but that was after those other two. But it was just, one thing after another kept happening, and I thought, my world's tumbling in. But I thought, I got to keep strong for the rest of the family, and that's what kept me going. And Carl, I probably couldn't have done it with anybody else. I know I couldn't have. He was a real strength.
What was the greatest accomplishment or joy that you've had in your life?
Oh, when I got married to Carl. After I was so scared the first time, before it started. Yep. Having my kids.
Uh-huh. And what other accomplishments did you have?
Well, I don't know if you call them accomplishments. I don't know. I can't think of anything right now. I guess I'm getting weary, maybe. I don't know.
It's late. Well, okay. As you look back on your life, what is one thing that you had to work really hard at and then finally succeeded?
Wow. I guess my China painting was one thing that I wanted to do so badly, and I really worked hard at where I got to the point where I felt like I could have competed with some of the ones that I'd taken lessons from. And I guess when you get to that point, you must have been successful at it a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess another thing that I never really was successful at, though, was having a good relationship with my mom. My brother was, no matter how wrong he was always the best. And he was always in trouble. She wouldn't admit it. And she and I never were really close. Like, I was close to my grandmother, Mimi. But I never, ever felt that closeness with my own mom. And when she moved in with us, I felt closer to her then than I ever had, because I was able to help her. And then when she got toward the last year and a half, she was really hard to get along with, because she took everything out on me, no matter what I did for her or didn't do. And so I never felt like I was successful with her. And I always feel bad about that. I know there were some things that I should have had more patience with, probably would have helped, but I didn't. And I've asked for forgiveness for that. That's all I can think of right now.
Let's see. What would you like to be remembered for by future generations?
Oh, wow. That's a really difficult one. Well, that I've loved to love. One thing that I've lived, and worked, and loved the gospel. And that was really something that I had to work at. I always went to Sunday school as a kid. But I never really spent any time reading or understanding the gospel like I have. Mainly just since lost Carl. He always wanted me to read, and I've never been a reader, and he was. And he would read to me, and I'd fall asleep every night. And after I lost him, I thought he wanted me to learn. And so I made a commitment to do that. And I've not been successful every day at it, but I've worked harder than I did then. And I've found that I love the gospel, and I want my kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids to have that joy. It just makes life worth living. And I hope the little ones remember me because I love them. And although I'm not able to be with them very much, I hope they'll remember me a little from my silly stories about the squirrel. You know that when I went back to the last time I was in San Diego, that Aaron wanted me to tell him his freckle story. Can you believe it?
That's
And
great.
Matthew came in and listened to. I couldn't believe that either.
They're good kids.
They are good kids. I'm thankful for that.
Well, this last question kind of relates to what you were just talking about, but it says, tell me about your testimony of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and are there any spiritual experiences that you'd like to share?
Well, one of the experiences that I've had is when Carl passed away, and I saw him sitting on the tractor out there, and I asked David to go check, and I said something's wrong. And my neighbor next door came over when the fire department came, and she said to me, "Oh, Bev, he's going to be all right." I said, "No, he's not. He's gone." And although I was broken-hearted, I think I was kind of in a, I don't know what you call it. I was so grateful that he had passed away that way, because I knew that he was going to go and be in with his Heavenly Father and Jesus, and I knew he was going to be able to see those people that he'd grown so much to love from reading. And he didn't have to suffer for a long time like a lot of people, but I think my testimony grew stronger because I knew that he was going to be okay there. And I think of the people that don't have that in their lives and what they must go through, and think it's all over, you know. And I know it's not. And that's been the only thing that's kept me going, I think. When I get down, I think about that. And I think I can't do this because I got to be strong enough so I have the opportunity to go back and be with him.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.